The United States Supreme Court is considering a case today that could have a major impact on how voters are represented here in Arizona. We're one of a handful of states with an independent redistricting commission, and that's a bipartisan panel that redraws our state's congressional districts. Today, the High Court heard a lawsuit out of North Carolina. That state recently had its Republican-drawn congressional district maps thrown out. The lower courts ruled they were gerrymandering. Now the Supreme Court will decide if redistricting can be left completely up to state legislatures. News 4 Tucson's Shelley Jackson explains from downtown.
It's been called the Supreme Court case that could upend elections. Now, it's too early to tell how the justices will rule, but one choice could give state lawmakers unchecked authority to run congressional elections, even if it violates their state constitution.
A lot of the hyperbole around this case is being a threat to democracy, potentially a catastrophic threat to democracy. And I think that rhetoric is entirely overblown.
And here, the theory is that whether or not they're abiding by the Arizona's constitution would be up to the legislators themselves to determine, not to the state courts to determine whether or not the legislatures are complying with the Constitution. They'd be their own judge and jury.
According to the Brennan Center for Justice, a ruling in favor of the independent state legislature doctrine could potentially nullify state constitutional provisions regarding federal elections.
And one of the major concerns is that if the court were to rule in the favor of the petitioners and say that that the legislators, according to the U.S. Constitution, have a absolute power, unreviewable by state courts in deciding how federal congressional elections are run, then that could impact how the Arizona Redistricting Commission operates. Now,
critics say ballot initiatives that created independent redistricting commissions in Arizona and other states could be invalidated. It could also impact ballot initiatives which address voting rights.
It would leave the lines, the power to draw the lines solely within the state legislature's authority.
But Jason Sneed, executive director with Honest Elections, says he doesn't see this as an attack on independent redistricting commissions.
I see this as pushback against the persistent misuse of the courts by partisan lawyers to rewrite election laws, particularly in the heat of an election for partisan gain.
Now, Congress does have a constitutional mandate to write federal election laws, and that could preempt any action by state legislatures if the doctrine prevails. Reporting from downtown, Shelley Jackson, News 4 Tucson.